Hello everyone, welcome to this new lecture on tuples. So in the last lecture we have discussed about lists, and as I already mentioned that tuples and lists are quite similar, tuples having some less functionalities and also that it's not changeable or non-mutable. Okay, so to start with we'll be taking tuple as T, and I have declared the same elements inside it: apple, banana, mango, and 2. Now we need to understand the ways of representing a tuple. For list, it was quite simple. Li equals to, and you put the third bracket, or you use the list function, whatever works for you. Now for tuple, we do have this particular method, tuple, and we can also take tuple equals to this. So this gives me a tuple. But other than this, we can also declare a tuple by the following methods. First, so this everyone can understand, this is a tuple, right? Now, if we even do not give the first bracket, we explicitly we do not need to explicitly declare all the brackets. We can just go ahead and type the collection of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. In that case itself, so type of the, it has still understood that it's a tuple. Now again, one important thing that we need to know is if we, let's say, write T equals to, right, give this first bracket and write one element inside it, or let's say A, anything. People might think this is a tuple, but it is actually not. A tuple must have at least a collection of 2 items, at least. If it needs to have one item, then a comma is what is necessary to be put. So for example, when we see type of C1, we get it to be an integer. However, in the second thing that we have done is, we have just put a comma, and now it's showing it's to be a tuple, right? Same can be understood here for D1. I think everyone can understand that this would be a, so I think everyone can understand that D1 is a integer. That's what it is. But when I put D1, D2 equals to 1, comma, it again becomes a tuple. So tuple can be declared by first brackets or by just mentioning a collection of numbers. Also, one thing to note, if you put just one number inside the first bracket, it is not a tuple. You need to put at least a comma to make Python understand that you are using a tuple. All right. So this was all about how to represent a tuple. Now coming to the operations, as I have already mentioned that due to its non-mutability, it cannot perform operations like append, insert, or extend. Neither can it perform operations like remove, pop, del, and clear. It cannot replace, neither can it sort, right? So the things that it can actually perform are accessing items, looping through the tuple, concatenation, copy of a tuple, and the mathematical operations that we have already learned in lists. So accessing an item in tuple is as same as that in lists or strings. So T of 1 is giving me banana. A tuple was this, apple, banana, mango, and 2. So T of 1 is banana. And the rest as follows, very similar to that of lists. Looping through tuple is again as similar to that as lists. We just need to put the name of the tuple inside it and then print I. So we get the items printed. And again, we can use the range concept that I have already discussed in lists. Again, concatenation is as similar to that as in lists. We just use the plus symbol to concatenate. For copying of a tuple, this is where it gets different. Copying of a tuple can very easily be done by T1 equals to T2. And why is that? Let's understand the reason, right? So the essential reason behind it is you can append, clear, or replace items in a list. You cannot do so in tuple, right? Can you do? No. Therefore, when you declare a tuple, a memory space, let's say A, B, and 1. So let's say T1 points to this particular memory place. The copying of a tuple actually makes not a lot of sense. But if you write T1 equals to T2, it points at the same place. There's not much you can change here. And therefore, where T1 points, T2 points at the same place. Since T1 cannot be changed, therefore it doesn't really matter if you create another tuple. So T1 equals to T2 does our work. Again, we do not necessarily copy a tuple. That is something we do for lists. So that is one thing that we need to understand. Right. The last thing that we also need to know is we can also perform the same mathematical operations, sum, max, mean, and also the len function. Let me quickly write it as well. So print len of li or t. That's what I've mentioned. And yeah, that's what we get. So very similar to lists. The essential difference that I've already mentioned in a chart previously is the representation as well as performing this mutable functions. Other than this, tuple and lists are quite the same. So that's all for today. We'll be learning about sets and dictionaries in the subsequent lectures.